Kia ora, everyone. My name is Dr. Ali Saifuddin. I'm an associate professor in the School of Science at Auckland University of Technology, and I'm a paper leader for the course Bio 803, or Introduction to Medicinal Cannabis. In the next 12 weeks or so, I'm going to give you an outline of what we discuss in the classroom with the students taking this course. In doing that, I would hope to discuss or bring to your attention some of the most viable issues that the New Zealand medicinal cannabis industry is facing today. The course Bio 803, or Introduction to Medicinal Cannabis, started in the year 2020 under the first COVID lockdown. We had about 100 students who attended the course. The course followed by another iteration in 2021, and this year in 2022, we are running the third iteration of the course. So the medicinal cannabis has come a long way in New Zealand. In the first week of the course, we talk about the course itself, about a history of medicinal cannabis, and the New Zealand legislation. We then go on and talk about recreational use of cannabis, because there's a lot of learning in that space for medicinal sector to learn from. We'll talk about hemp and its uses, about cultivation of cannabis. This is where we talk about indoor and outdoor, and all sorts of different techniques that are used, nutrients that are used for cultivation of cannabis. We'll talk about the pharmacology and the endocannabinoid system. We'll talk about the terpenes and the properties and pharmacological potential when they come together and act synergistically towards that entourage effect. And then we go and talk about the pharmacotherapeutics of cannabis. Here is where we bring all the evidence, all the clinical evidence that supports certain uses, medicinal uses for cannabis. We'll then go into formulation, see how extracts are made, how dosage formulations are prepared, and finally we'll also talk about quantification and analysis of cannabinoids and medicinal cannabis. So in this first week, we're going to talk about cannabis in general, its place in human history and civilization. There's some really interesting pictures here, but the oldest records of using cannabis medicinally goes back to about 10,000 years ago in China. And you see a lot of evidence for its use, medicinal use in India, in Middle East, in Persia, in Egypt, and so on. So it's really a compound or a plant that we've been using throughout our civilization for its medicinal uses until came the prohibition about 60 years ago. So all the countries followed US legislation on banning cannabis from the surface of the earth. And so a plant which was purely used for its medicinal purposes suddenly became illegal and became a black market commodity. This is changing now. So that's really good to know that there's legalization movements around the world and also here in New Zealand for its medicinal uses. You may ask, why are we so interested in cannabis? Well, the fact is that there are around 150 different cannabinoids identified in the plant. Each of these cannabinoids on its own has certain medicinal properties. And when combined together with terpenes, they have different effects on different individuals. So they can cure and manage pain, chronic pain. They're really good compounds and regimens to add to chemotherapy to elevate patients' well-being, to increase the appetite and control the pain, in seizure, in depression, in anxiety. There's just the endless number of uses for medicinal cannabis, and we'll discuss each and every one of these uses in this course as we go through the material. So if you want to be part of that movement, you perhaps want to come and take this course or educate yourself about medicinal cannabis and learn more. In general, at least in New Zealand, these are the three things that we need to know to be able to push forward and create more opportunities for the country, as well as providing a meaningful access to a wide variety of medicinal or herbal medicines. We need public awareness about medicinal cannabis, about cannabis benefits. We need to debunk that belief that cannabis is harmful. All the clinical trials, all the clinical evidence is showing us that there is no harm. When I say there is no harm, there's minimal harm. There is no chronic conditions associated with cannabis, and you cannot find one single mortality associated with the use of cannabis. It's a compound that is generally safe. It's safer than paracetamol, and definitely much safer than alcohol. We need more studies to prove its safety and efficacy for particular conditions, and we need to develop more novel and effective formulations that don't aim to make patients high, but aim to release and establish and maintain an effective concentration in the bloodstream and in the systemic circulation to manage the conditions. That condition could be chronic pain, it could be anxiety or depression, or it could be a child that undergoes 400 seizures a week. So there are really palliative patients that are struggling from day to day for their life, basically. And the least we could do is to give them options. And not only GMP isolated preparations, but whole spectrum cannabis products in a much more accessible form that we have formulated today. So, as we know, prohibition didn't work, and it still doesn't work. Join me in this course and in the next 12 weeks to talk about cannabis and to normalize what potentially could be one of the most effective, useful medicinal plant on the surface of the earth. Kia ora.